Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. As always, I would love to start in lying down in the semi-supine position, but before we begin, I just want to let you know that we will be today looking at the ribs, specifically the upper part of the ribs and the chest, lying and possibly sitting in different positions, exploring the expansion of the breath and vibration and resonance uh, with different arm positions, and just seeing if we can really deeply feel into different parts of the ribs, specifically the upper part of the rib cage. As always, I want to encourage you to take authority over your practice. If a position doesn't feel right for you, you feel pain, or if you know you have a limited mobility or an injury, please take charge over your own practice, and feel free to make adaptations as you see fit. If you're unsure of the directions or if you need help coming up with an adaptation, please feel free to just write in the chat or to unmute yourself and just let me know if you need support. Um, and know that there are no correct way to pursue this exploration. With the philosophy of Feldenkrais and Alexander technique, less is more in many instances. I would rather you, if you feel a thickening or tensing in the muscles, I would prefer you to ask yourself, how can I do less? And depending on what your nervous system, what your body needs today, you might find that a practice in which you make a movement in which your arm moves from there to there might be enough, or even a practice in which you are moving only in your imagination. That is actually remarkably powerful. So I encourage you to take that authority over your own practice and to see what discoveries you find. So with that, we will begin in the semi-supine position. As always, we start every session arriving to the session. So very gently and slowly, feel free to make your way onto the mat, onto your backs. Feel free to use books, a foam pad, or a pillow. And please feel free to have pillows, blankets, socks, layers for cushioning beneath, warmth, whatever you need throughout the practice. And if at any point throughout the practice you need to grab, please feel free to do so. So we arrive in semi-supine position, letting our body land on the floor. With the head supported, our cushion or our books or our foam pad will give our neck the sensation of lengthening and being an extension of the rest of the spine. You might find that the books or the cushion are too high or too low, and you might find that over the course of the practice you might need to change the levels, and that's absolutely fine. So as you settle into your mat, and as we arrive, I want to invite you to notice where you feel contact with the floor. Starting with the feet, maybe gently putting pressure into the right foot, and then the left. Maybe alternating back and forth a few times, feeling the pressure, the contact with the floor. Letting that fall away, the pressure, and just letting your feet at rest, make contact with the floor and notice how it feels. Perhaps one foot feels more in contact with the floor than the other. And perhaps you're noticing other things up in the hips or the knees as well. Please feel free to move your feet away or closer to you or wider apart as needed. Carry that attention to the back of the pelvis. The sacroiliac joint, as it makes contact with the floor, and the pyramid that it makes with the feet. And as I said, we might notice that one side of the pelvis feels more open than the other. I encourage you to find an arrangement for your feet so that it feels like your knees are floating up in a way. And that your hips and your hip flexor muscles, which are the muscles right here in the front of the hip bones, they are soft and relaxed. If you find you need to lay one or the other of your legs long, please feel free to do so, or both. Just breathe into the back of the pelvic floor, into the back of the pelvis, that is. Just feel the contact, just one side of the pelvis. Make more contact with the floor than the other by chance. There is no right or wrong. We all have our own habits and the habitual movement. We're not here to correct, we're just here to notice. Take another breath in, feeling the contact of your feet, the floor, as if you're breathing into the soles of your feet. Let that go. And bringing your attention up into the back. Feeling the back make contact with the floor, the back of the ribs, back of the torso. You might notice does one side or the other feel more connected to the floor? Do you feel more connected with the lower part of the ribs, or maybe up towards the shoulders or the shoulder girdle? And there is, again, no right or wrong. We're just noticing. And on each inhale, I encourage you to notice the contact that feels most prominent and breathe into it. And on your exhale, let it go. And then on the contact that feels the least prominent, I encourage you to breathe into that place. And on your exhale, let it go. And maybe integrating into this picture the triangle, the pyramid of the pelvis and the 2 feet. How does the back and the shoulder blades, the shoulder girdle in particular, play a role? Can we note the contact with the floor in all 3 places simultaneously? Breathe in and breathe out. Then moving up a little bit further to the skull, the back of the head, making contact with the support underneath it. And once again, notice the shape of the contact with the floor. Is one side more connected than the other? Do you feel more connected in the lower part of the skull or in the upper part of the skull? There is no right or wrong. We're just noticing. And on your breath, I encourage you to breathe in, feeling this contact. On the exhale, let your weight sink into the floor even more. And over the next few breaths, see if you can integrate the skull in with the back of the torso, the back of the pelvis, soles of the feet. And feel all the different places where you feel the most contact. And then the least contact. Breathe into the places with the least contact. And let them go. Breathe into the places with the most contact. And let them go. And then for our final moments of arrival, I encourage you to notice the width of your arms. Usually in semi-supine position, we have our hands resting into the belly, into the abdomen. You might have your hands long by your sides. Wherever your hands are placed, I encourage you to first notice the upper arms. Maybe even just under the armpit, where the arm meets the torso. Feel the contact with the floor, if there is any. And on each breath, on each inhale, I invite you to just move a little bit, a few centimeters, an inch down the arm. And on each exhale, I invite you to give your weight in your arms into the floor a little bit more. And noticing your joints, the contact they make with the floor, whether they're long or whether your hands are touching your torso. If your arms are long, continue to scan all the way down, giving your weight into the floor. And if your hands are touching your torso like mine, I encourage you to also scan down into the palms, scan down the arms until you reach the palms and feel the contact the palms make with your torso or the abdomen, wherever your hands are placed. In each breath, I encourage you to breathe into those places of contact with the arms and the floor and your hands on the floor. Let the surface be input. With the exhale, letting go of the weight. And you can, if your knees are up or if your hands are touching the torso, so you've got your forearms, your lower arms kind of floating in the air, or your thighs and shins floating in the air because your knees are up. I invite you to really feel the weight of these places as well. And with one final inhale, see if you can bring in and integrate your awareness of all of these parts, all of the contact you're making with the floor, all as one. Breathe in. Breathe out. Now for today's session, we are going to, as I said, be paying attention to the ribs and where the ribs are making, how we breathe into our ribs. So at this point, hopefully you feel a little bit more in, you feel that you've arrived to the session. And what I'd like to do now is I'd love to invite you to stay in this place for a few cycles of breath and just start to notice where you feel the breath most in your ribs. Do you feel it in your collarbones? Do you feel it in the sternum, the front centered breastbone? Do you feel your breath as your ribs press into the floor in the back? Maybe under your armpits. Where do you feel your breath and your chest expanding most? And there is no right or wrong. I just want to invite you to notice. And notice, is it on one side or the other that the sensation is stronger? Or that you notice more immediately? See if you can tune in to the opposite side, if there is a more dominant side, and just see if you can notice. Just really try to zone in. For the more subtle places, the less dominant places where we can feel the breath, I invite you to go there. And just notice. We're just looking. Without judgment, there is no right or wrong. We're just observing where our breath maybe feels the most free. That can tell us something. It's useful. That information is useful and interesting. Now, at this point, I would love to invite you to start to take greater charge over your own practice. And by that, I mean, we're going to start moving the arms around into different positions. If you find you need, I want to start laying on in semi-supine on the back, but if you find you need to change positions, or if you need to take a cushion away, I invite you to take greater charge of your practice moving forward so you can make these mechanical adjustments that work best for your body. So with that in mind, I'm going to remove my books and let my head lie long. And I think I'm going to use a blanket folded up under my head just to give myself a little bit of support, but a little bit more of a softer support than books. So if you need to take a moment to make your adjustments, please feel free to do so now. And if you've been like me, you've had your hands on your belly. So to focus in, I'd like to start with the left side. And with your arm, your left arm, I would love for you to form one half of a kind of a goalpost position, creating a reverse L with your arm. The hand is up next to your head, your elbow is bent. And moving this arm into this position, I would love for you to just take a few breaths here and see what you notice. And with the same spirit that we began this session, I would love to invite you to notice if there are any parts of you lifting off of the floor, any holding. And if so, on your breath in, just breathe a greeting into that space, and on the exhale, see if you can give the weight away to the floor. And see how your sensation has changed. And then when you feel ready, I would love to invite you to take your left arm and have it diagonally extended long away from your torso. See if you can let the palm of the hand face down to the floor. And see what you notice. Once again, noticing and holding, breathing into those places and letting the weight drop into the floor. Noticing where the breath feels the most prominent on that side. Breath in, breathe in a greeting. On the breath out, give away the weight. In the next breath, I invite you to bring your left arm across the torso. See if you can find a position that feels the most comfortable to you. You might have the arm, so I'll show you this way. I'm just letting the arm lie across the chest. You can have the hand higher, but ideally no higher than the head. Down here. So just for yourself, see if you can find a position that feels comfortable for you. You might rest your arm on your hand on the opposite shoulder. And see if you can find a position in which you can give your weight fully of your left arm. You might find that a few positions are comfortable for you. So you might want to try multiple, and I invite you to do so, staying with each position for no less than 3 breaths. And each inhale, noticing, giving a greeting to different parts of where we're feeling our breath, and exhaling our weight into the floor. Do you notice maybe a part of your ribs that you didn't notice before is expanding? Whether it's the part under the arm or where your arm is resting in the front of your torso. And for one final exploration in this position, I invite you to bring your hand, if you can, above your head. So a little bit higher than the goalpost position, the hand being ideally directly above the head. So we feel a lot more open in the front of the chest and the armpit. Just breathing into this place and noting for yourself, am I holding? Do I immediately bring in attention? And no judgment, just noticing and seeing if you can give yourself permission to do less. See if the breath can free you breathe is to move. Breathing in a greeting. And exhaling your arrival. When you're ready to let that fall away, I invite you to bring the left arm down. Make any adjustments you need to move the right arm up into the goalpost position that we started with on the left side. And notice, so as I said, we'll be kind of in a 90-degree position as such. And just bring your arm over to the side so your hand is in line with your head. Roughly. And your arm, lower arm is going directly out, perpendicular to the torso. And as with the left side, we're just going to notice. We're going to breathe in, breathing, breathe out our arrival, letting our weight drop into the present. Noticing, is there a part of the rib that immediately jumps out to you prominently that you didn't expect or that you haven't noticed before? Does it feel significantly different from the left side or not very different at all? Notice if you're holding in your hand, see if you can let your hand be soft. And noticing if how you breathe in on the one side ripples over and affects the other side. When you're ready, bring your right arm down and diagonally away from the torso with the palm down. Breathing in here. Same as before. Do we notice anything differently? Are things starting to shift? Maybe breathe in, noticing part of your ribs that don't jump out immediately. See if you can tune in to finer sensations and just notice. Is there a movement in your ribs that you feel curious about? That surprises you even? And notice even as you're breathing in on the one side, on the right side, or focusing on the sensation that is there anything happening on the opposite side, the left side? Are you holding or tensing or helping? See if you can give yourself permission to let that go. When you're ready, I invite you to bring your right arm across your torso. And as before, feel free to try multiple positions if there's multiple that feel comfortable to you, staying for no less than 3 breaths in each. And with the arm across the torso, are there new parts of the ribs that become more obvious to you? For instance, for me, immediately underneath the armpit becomes more, and the side of the ribs becomes more prominent for me than they do in the other positions. And if that's also the case for you, if a different place becomes more prominent, or place that was prominent before becomes even more prominent, just see if you can breathe into that space. And exhale, arriving. Breathing into that space. Dropping your weight into the present. Our final position on our backs. I invite you to take your right arm and bring your right hand above your head. Breathing in. And if there's a restricted movement or motion, if you can't quite get your hand above your head, just, within a range of comfort. We don't want to feel any thickening, but just your hand ideally higher above than the goalpost position if possible. If not, that's absolutely fine. And just notice for yourself what this new position brings up for you. Is there something new? Breathing in, greeting the less obvious sensation in that the right side of the ribs. Exhaling, now arriving. Once again, noticing in your hands Feel like you're holding or flexing or tensing. See if you can let that go and yield. Breathe in, yield your weight to the floor. When you're ready, bring your hands down to your sides. If you, like me, maybe feel a need for support again, maybe get a cushion for under your head if you don't still have one. Resume the normal semi-supine position. And noticing how your breath feels different, if at all, after having kind of opened up the shape of our ribs in a few different positions. To feel a little more grounded into the floor. Does your rib cage feel wider on the floor or longer or heavier? When you're ready, I invite you to roll to one or the other of your sides. Just slowly, slowly make your way up to sitting. And just for a few moments in an upright position, notice if your ribs feel different in this new upright position. Maybe you notice the expansion in the back more than you have in the past, or perhaps you notice the upper part of the chest and the front of the back, or the expansion of the ribs into the sides. Or maybe you notice the lift that comes from our lungs pressing down into the diaphragm. Just tune in, and you might not notice anything at all, and that's absolutely fine. To breathe is to move. And we just want to tune into that today so that we can move and breathe with ease. I invite you to, if your eyes are closed, gently open them. Make connection with everyone in the class. Breathe in. Let whatever you noticed fall away. And thank yourself and each other for sharing this 45 minutes together. I'm going to leave it there. Okay. I don't know why I wanted to do more, but I think to follow my own advice, less is more. And I invite you, uh, if you want to stay, this is the official end of the class, and we can have a short discussion about what you noticed, what you observed, um, any feelings about this as it pertains to the voice and expression. Or if you feel more internal and want to float off into your evening, you are most welcome to do so. But I just want to thank you for being here with us this evening. Thank you for your practice.